What is up, guys, and welcome to Pilot Week. Pretty much this week we're just going to be talking Republic pilots. We might not get to every individual pilot or aspect of Republic piloting that you wanted, but there's always a part 2 that can be made. So pretty much this week we'll talk about clone pilots quite a bit, particularly concerning their rather exceptional skills. But while clone pilots had a whole lot of advantages, they also had a few glaring problems that could have cost the Republic the war if they hadn't played it smart. In this video, we'll be discussing those problems and how they potentially could have changed the course of the Clone Wars. Clone pilots were selected for speciality training at an early age and were trained to handle LAAT gunships, ATTE walkers, and a few basic starfighter types. As the Clone Wars intensified and the Republic began to diversify its stock of vehicles, the ranks of the clone pilots were stretched between more and more starfighter types, each of which required training before operation. This led to a very dangerous problem, which the Republic was fortunately able to recognize early on. Something that the Kaminoans failed to predict was that space combat in the Clone Wars was very different from ground combat, especially in terms of clone effectiveness. For ground battles, the Grand Army of the Republic came with a set of standardized and highly efficient battle strategies, which allowed the Republic to win several crucial ground battles early in the war. Furthermore, clone troopers were significantly better than the CIS's battle droids. The average clone trooper could destroy 20 B1 units before dying himself, which allowed the Republic to overcome the Confederacy's numbers advantage. Space combat was much different. In space, not only was there still a profound number of differences between the Republic and CIS, but the skill gap was not nearly as wide. Standard issue CIS starfighter droids were very much capable of outmaneuvering clone pilots, which meant that the numbers advantage mattered all the more. The Republic was forced to keep researching newer, more durable starfighter designs to compensate for this, leading to the debut of fighters such as the ARC 170, which was designed to be heavier hitting and better equipped to protect its pilots. It didn't help that the Kaminoans had barely prepared at all for space combat. The Grand Army only came with one warship class, the acclimated class assault ship, which were not usually equipped to carry starfighters and were only adequate in the role of full-fledged warships. Combine this with an early lack of true starfighters and very few predefined battle plans, and you can see why space battles were a problem for the Republic, and especially for clone pilots. While the Republic quickly put together other types of warships and developed several starfighter models, they were still at a distinct disadvantage in every naval engagement. The biggest problem, of course, was numbers. While the CIS had billions of Vulture droids and other starfighter models at its disposal, the Republic didn't start with all that many clone pilots, and it took months before the Republic's starfighter corps became fully stocked with personnel. Even then, the clones were massively outnumbered, and the virtual elimination of the skill gap, as we discussed earlier, meant that large numbers of clones died in each starfighter engagement. The Republic was forced to pour lots of money into researching new types of starfighters that would be superior to the CIS's model to a degree that would allow clones to overcome their numbers problems. The shortage of clone pilots only intensified as more and more clone pilots were killed in action, and by the time of the Outer Rim sieges, this had gotten particularly grim. The Republic began to rely more and more on the starfighter components of planetary security forces like the Virujansi Rarefeed Air Cavalry so as to avoid having to use their own precious clones. Near the end of the war, standard clone troopers like those of the 501st Legion had even been trained to serve as clone pilots in emergency situations, showing just how dire the shortage had become. Near the last days of the war, the Republic began to circumvent this problem through a method that would become standard during the time of the Empire. Though none of the Spartai clones grown on Centax II were grown to serve as pilots, the Republic Starfighter Corps received an influx of new members around the same time, albeit from a different quarter. Aces from the planetary security forces that had shown extreme skill in cockpits were cloned to make new, non-FET batches of clone pilots, which began to be integrated not long after the Battle of Coruscant. Another major problem faced by clone pilots was the types of starfighters that they were up against. Of the 4 main factions depicted in the Star Wars movies, the CIS had the best navy by far due to its diversity of warship types and starfighter tactics. Vulture droid swarm tactics were effective, but the starfighters fielded by the CIS themselves were actually quite deadly, unlike their ground-based droid counterparts. The worst part about this, for clone pilots, was that their effectiveness stemmed primarily from the fact that they were droids, something that the clone pilots obviously couldn't imitate. Contrary to popular belief, vulture droids were actually exceptionally deadly and rightfully feared by most pilots during the Clone Wars. Though they were unshielded, poorly armored, and often taken out by the dozens by Jedi pilots, they posed a significant threat to anyone that wasn't Force sensitive. Each droid was armed with 4 laser cannons and a pair of energy torpedo launchers, which were extremely deadly, and most importantly, the droids were fast. Vulture droids could fly at speeds that would kill any organic pilot, and they could maneuver better than anyone short of a Jedi. Combine this with their swarm tactics, which saw them deployed by the thousands, and vulture droids were often capable of shredding clone pilots, at least until heavier clone starfighters came around. But in response to these heavy Republic starfighters, the CIS came out with an even deadlier fighter, the Tri-Fighter. Tri-Fighters were some of the deadliest starfighters to ever see action, and even posed a threat to the Jedi pilots. They were equipped with advanced onboard computers, heavy weapons, and heavier armor than their smaller colleagues, and were still capable of flying and maneuvering at breakneck speeds. While Tri-Fighters were fewer in number than vulture droids, each of them was easily capable of taking out multiple clone pilots before destruction, making them the Confederacy's most feared fighter type for a good reason. And of course, almost all CIS starfighter models shared the advantages of being droids. As previously discussed, this allowed them to fly faster and make tighter turns than any living pilot, and it also made them more accurate and more aware of the battle as a whole. Of course, there was also another advantage to droid fighters. As Rune Hacko put it, droids don't talk back, they don't question orders, and they don't complain when you send them on suicide missions. Droid starfighters would do whatever was necessary without question, even if it meant mass kamikaze attacks, something that the Republic of course was incapable of. And finally, the CIS had the added advantage of central control computers. While these may seem like a weakness, especially after episode 1, they were highly beneficial to starfighter squadrons as they allowed for coordination of the sort that only Jedi battle meditation could achieve otherwise. The Confederacy's numbers, combined with its superior fighter types and coordination, meant that no matter what the circumstances, the Republic was always at a disadvantage for starfighter battles unless Jedi got involved, especially in the first half of the war. Now that we've illustrated the problems of the Republic Navy, you may well be wondering how on earth was the Republic able to deal with the problem of space battles? Well, the answer is simple, they avoided them altogether. Unless Jedi aces like Anakin Skywalker or Saesee Tiin were available, the Republic generally tried to plan around naval battles, especially at the start of the Clone Wars. Even in the starfighter battles we did see, this is quite clearly seen. The Republic almost always ends up relying on a Jedi or creative tactics, as they almost always were severely outmatched. And of course, the Republic did improve its own stock of starfighters as well. Its early fleet of commandeered Delta 7s and co-opted LAAT gunships were quickly joined by the V-19 Torrent starfighter and later the Y-Wing bomber, the two of which became the early backbone of the Republic starfighter corps. Later additions like the ARC-170, the Z-95 Headhunter, the V-Wing, and the ETA-2 Interceptor, and by the time of the Battle of Coruscant, the Confederacy's starfighter advantage had been significantly diminished, even if many Jedi pilots had been taken out of the fight. So that was our analysis of the problems with the clone pilots and the Republic Navy as a whole, and don't worry, the rest of the week won't be as negative as this video was toward our beloved clone pilots. This was just highlighting the obvious flaws they had and why most of the time the Jedi and clones would have preferred to avoid space battles than directly engage in them. So as per usual, let me know what you think. Do you like the idea of a pilot week? And more importantly, if you were a clone pilot, which starfighter would you want to fly and why? Post your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you want to become your very own clone pilot, make sure you check out our Gmod and our Roblox server. Our Gmod, we have the Clone Wars roleplay where you can of course be a clone pilot. Our Imperial roleplay where you can be a Stormtrooper pilot. Our Halo roleplay if you want something a little different than Star Wars. And as I mentioned before, our Roblox, which is a lot of fun and you can become your own Robloxian 501st pilot. Also, I want to give a big thank you to all my patrons. Their names are in the description below as well. Big thank you to you guys. You guys really help motivate me and you guys really help improve the quality and quantity of the videos that I currently produce. So if you want to support me and check out their names, all those links are in the description below, as well as our Geetsly's Gaming Network links. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in the next video.